Hey folks, Jackdaw here. If you've been following my channel of Dragon Age the Veilguard's development for quite a while, you've likely already heard of the early plans for the next Dragon Age, initially known as Project Joplin. If you don't know, don't worry, because today we're going deep into this cancelled project. Thanks to the Veilguard's Artbook, we now have a full proper look at the fascinating ideas that could have shaped this ambitious sequel. Before we start, let's all be clear and on the same page. Everything discussed here is conceptual. It doesn't actually represent a fully finished game. Instead, these glimpses into Dragon Age 4's original direction offer a compelling look at what might have been if things were different, building directly off Trespasser and of course with Mike Laidlaw's creative vision leading the helm. According to this art book, the Veilguard was a truly one-of-a-kind project, producing more concept art than the rest of the series combined, and maybe even the Mass Effect trilogy. And with Dragon Age 4's decade of development, this art book very neatly organises the project into very distinct phases: Post-Inquisition, Joplin and Veilguard. Post-Inquisition and Joplin being the meat of this story. Now, Joplin's story is an interesting one. It was going to be a direct sequel building on Inquisition's story with a rich narrative-driven approach. After Mass Effect Andromeda released in 2017, BioWare turned its focus to Joplin, but unfortunately by late 2017, mounting issues with Anthem forced EA to cancel Joplin, cutting 2 years of pre-production and marking the end of Laidlaw's time at BioWare, among a few other veterans as well, like David Gaider, who departed the studio in 2016. The Dragon Age project was then reimagined as Morrison, with creative director Matthew Goldman taking the helm, built initially with some kind of live service element or long-term gameplay revenue plan with at least some kind of multiplayer element, but fortunately in 2021 it pivoted to its single-player roots, evolving into what we now know as Dragon Age the Veilguard. So today we're unpacking the untold concepts and exploring what could have been if Joplin, in an ideal world, had been cancelled, starting with the post-Inquisition phase. So let's dive straight in, of course. As Inquisition was wrapping up in 2015, the Dragon Age team started experimenting with quote beat boards, these polished illustrations that capture big story moments. These visuals became the foundation for early creative sessions, with only a few broad ideas at the time, like we're going north, maybe there'll be titans. The focus was on crafting striking concepts and asking one simple question: what would be cool? And so early concepts that shaped this post-Inquisition phase include a secret mission in Tevinter, receiving a crucial assignment from the Inquisitor, returning to Ravane with a precious quest object, a hidden lair in Manrathus's Undercity as the player's base, infiltrating the Archon's throne room, the Divine dispatching ships to hunt Solas, hoping his capture could bring peace to Thedas, a mobile player base, like a ship, to access key regions across northern Thedas, a Tevinter Magister, a chastened witch, and a Ben Hastreth commander conspiring against Rook. Something in the depths, terrifying the dwarves enough to drive them to the surface en masse. A daring return to the Fade to rescue the one left behind in Inquisition, exploring how their time there shaped them and revealing crucial insights into Solas's plan. A climactic battle in Manrathus where Solas summons a Titan, and a final journey to the heart of darkness to confront Solas himself. The focus, at least based on these concepts, was pretty clear. Joplin was going to be more darker, more personal, and filled with high-stakes conflict. Similar to Inquisition, advisors played a key role in Joplin, but this time they were more than just friendly faces. They represented how much the world and its characters had changed. Morrigan fully embraced her new powers bequeathed by Mythal, offering wisdom on magic and ancient elven mysteries. Dorian became a seasoned guide through Tevinter's treacherous political landscape. and smuggler Admiral Isabella promised daring naval adventures able to get players into and out of any port in Thedas. One of the coolest ideas in Joplin was something that BioWare call the Black Codex, a top secret document that laid out the real definitive history of Thedas, revealing these hidden truths that had been hinted at in previous games. Of course, the Veilguard does offer many answers to long-standing questions. However, the Black Codex is a different matter entirely because it captures Thedas' past from multiple cultural perspectives, giving players a richer, more complex view of the world. And what the Black Codex revealed and what was going to be revealed initially in Joplin is this story. We see the first of the elves. Spirits inspired by the dwarves' connection to the Titans decided then to create bodies for themselves out of the Titans' flesh, becoming the first elves. Then we see the Elven-Titan War. This war changed everything. It only ended when Solas made the Titans tranquil, severing their magic, equally making the dwarves tranquil too. The elves claimed their victory and used the Titans' power to build the greatest empire Thedas had ever seen. And then we see the origin of the Blight. The elven gods, hungry for power, tapped into the imprisoned Titans' souls. But this process corrupted them, twisting their magic into what became the Blight. In a desperate attempt to stop the Blight, Solas sealed the world's magic behind the veil, using blood magic and destroying the Elven Empire in the process, to which we see the Golden Cities fall, as centuries later, the Blight lured the Tevinter Magisters to the Golden City, but when they arrived, it was already blackened and corrupted. And so this Black Codex was intended to tie everything together, giving us all a chance to finally piece together these long-standing mysteries, connecting all the dots, unfolding in Joplin. So getting to Joplin, after Dragon Age Inquisition and its DLC then wrapped, BioWare turned its full focus to this sequel, now giving it the codename Joplin. Initially envisioned as a fantasy spy thriller, it evolved into the concept centered on covert commandos, sending players on high-stake missions in a new part of Thedas to hunt down the most dangerous man in the world. To streamline development of Joplin, writers and artists worked side by side from the very start, creating beatboards and storyboards that captured the full narrative early on. For the first time, the entire team could see the story's scope before production began, allowing for the very best collaboration and iteration. This also gave the art team a clear sense of which locations and which designs would be central to the game. This covert commandos theme really allowed BioWare for a mix of subtle strategy and explosive action, letting players choose their specific approaches to challenges. While the term does suggest stealth and rogues, it left plenty of room for warriors to still smash things and mages to unleash devastating spells. And some initial covert commando mission ideas were thrown in this book, like a heist going wrong, exploring Tevinter's Undercity, 3 warriors making a stand to protect fleeting civilians, a thrilling pursuit aboard an Aravel, sabotaging the docks, and discovering a hidden refuge of griffins. Early in development, the writers and artists worked together to sketch out new characters and reimagine old favourites. This was more than just fan service, it was a chance to show how time and experience had shaped faces old and new, and some intriguing early concepts that really hit so hard. Cole returning as a compassionate voice for Solas, offering some insights into his plan. Sten making his long-awaited return from Origins, and a brand new character, Solas' partner Reva, envisioned as a bad cop counter to Solas' good cop. This would have married up well with the whole Agents of Fen'Harel that were causing mayhem that we saw in the short story half up front in Tevinter Nights, but more on Reva shortly. And then we do see a beautiful early gathering scene where the initial concept companion party meets in a private booth at some place called the Blue Blood Club. I can only imagine it being in Tevinter. And this lineup was packed with some really fantastic initial characters. First up we have Imshael, an ancient desire demon first seen in the Masked Empire, who could shapeshift seemingly, based on their art, between male and female forms. And we have a shocking twist for their role in the story, but more on that one soon. We then have a design for Tash as a rogue, clad in a sleek dragon suit, perfect for high society infiltration. A new character as an Antivan Crow dreamer, covered in tattoos that anchor their identity when returning from the Fade. Then a very dapper Qunari spy, offering a rare glimpse into the intricacies of Qunari life. Davrin, but his design more explored between the dynamic of being a warden and then a Dalish hunter. Lucanus, who was originally designed as a Tevinter agent, and I think that maybe he could have originally been a shadowy Sakari, which is a brand new Tevinter Shadow Network faction that has only been mentioned in Tevinter Knights, so kind of makes sense why they cut that. And lastly, we have Calpurnia, set to make her return from Inquisition as a fully fledged party member, continuing her complex arc. However, it would seem Nev had taken over that role instead. And now we get to the real stuff. The concept art for Joplin gave us glimpses into what could have been one of the most ambitious Dragon Age stories ever. It showed the team at their lowest point, with hope completely gone. And then another piece teased an uprising in Tevinter, which I can only assume would be a fight against slavery in the Imperium. Some moments focused on the personal and emotional, like a romance unfolding on the high seas, and then a tense aquatic infiltration in Tevinter. Solas, as expected, was at the heart of it all. One concept captured a confrontation where he was on the verge of victory, only for the player to reveal a crucial truth about the Last Elves. In another, he appeared in a dream, clashing with Rook. We have the most familiar callback of Dragon Age 4's marketing, where Solas was shown rebuilding the Lyrium dagger from, of course, Dragon Age 2's Red Lyrium idol. Rook then meets with Tevinter's Archon, hinting at high political stakes, and the fantasy elements really stood out as we see Gillenane rising dramatically from the sea, shaking Thedas to its core, and then the chilling discovery of Elganan's archdemon. Another piece showed Rook stopping Solas' ritual, but the aftermath hinted at something or someone escaping, and then one of the most striking moments captures Solas sacrificing himself to seal the veil, tranquilizing himself to contain the blight and reclose the magical barrier holding Thedas together. The art certainly didn't shy away from darker possibilities, exploring what could have happened if Solas actually succeeded. In this devastating fail state, his ritual reshaped Thedas forever, bringing the ancient elves back to reclaim the world that they had lost. Another big thread had Rook and her team chasing down the Red Lyrium idol, eventually leading them to a high-stakes black market auction. But of course, it ain't always that simple. There's a rival team who are equally after the idol, turning the whole thing into a frantic, high-pressure race to see who could get it first. At another point, Rook teamed up with the Wardens to take on Elganan. Together they managed to bring him down, but the danger didn't stop there. Solas was always looming, using his powers to attack through dreams. In another failsafe, Solas could remotely kill Rook. And then we see Solas' treachery once more as he lures all of his enemies into one spot, taking them all out together. Here we see Reva again, Solas' bad cop lieutenant, who seemed as ruthless as they come. In one moment, Rook disguised herself to sneak into an Acropolis ball hosted by the undead. She made it to the host's office, only to find Reva already there. Reva had outplayed her completely, walking away with critical intel to hand back to Solas, leaving Rook in the dust. Of course, as you can expect, Solas' manipulations was at the heart of this story, and he clearly was more of an antagonist than he is in the Veilguard. A critical moment of this is the concept of him stirring up chaos between Tevinter and the Antam, driving them to war, very much similar to the half-up-front story again in Tevinter Knights. His ultimate goal was a blood magic ritual powerful enough to rival the very creation of the Veil itself. Meanwhile, Rook was of course caught right in the middle, trying to broker peace on both sides. But if diplomacy were to fail between these two, Rook's last resort would be to sabotage Solas' magical orbs scattered across the battlefield, hoping to derail his plans. minutes. The stakes only climbing higher as you reach the Arlefan forest, where Solas' ritual was already in motion. Rook fought through his elven followers to confront him, arriving just as he plunged his lyrium dagger into the veil. And at that moment, Reaver revealed Solas' monstrous dread wolf form. Yet stopping Solas wasn't the end of this story, as we can assume, and as we've seen, it unleashed an even greater danger that threatened Thedas on an unimaginable scale, Elganan and Gillenane, which to be fair is probably a story we know the most, with the Veilguard most likely pivoting towards more the gods being the rival anyway. Even so, it ain't Dragon Age without a few twists, and this time, Imshale was once loyal to Solas, now gets revealed to be working with him all along. Should have known. That's what you get for having a forgotten one on your team. Meanwhile, the dwarves of Kalsharok perform an ominous ritual tied to a titan. In another scene, we see Solas' final act was one of sacrifice. He tranquilizes Gillenane to contain the chaos, and then he uses the same method on himself, sealing the veil once more. The haunting end showed him walking alone into the Black City, leaving behind a world forever changed and more questions than answers. And there was a few moments of bittersweet closure, Rook exchanging a final message with the Inquisitor. There's some kind of sacrifice to open something called the Black Alluvion, and depending on your choices, Rook finding a brief moment of happiness with their love interest. And then Charter even delivered secret instructions to Rook, hinting at her presence in this story originally. With all those concepts taking shape, one of the biggest ones was the game's hub, that being a ship called the Dumat, named after the first archdemon. Using Frostbite's engine, the team realized they could borrow some impressive ocean technology from Battlefield to bring this concept truly to life. But there was one major issue: boats don't really fit into the whole spy, thriller, fantasy theme they were going for. Boats are big, easy to spot and vulnerable, but you know what would work a lot better and be a lot harder to find? Submarine. Now, of course, submarines sound pretty wild for a fantasy game, but that's exactly what made it so interesting for BioWare. The challenge was making it feel like it belonged in Thedas. Submarines don't scream fantasy, so the team leaned into a design that resembled a sea monster, giving it a dragon-like look that fit its name. Its interior reflected its Tevinter origin, luxurious with a dark edge. And there was an intriguing idea involving a prisoner held in the brig. Do you trust them and let them out, or keep them locked away? The choice would be yours. And to make it dynamic, the team explored adding a captain and an engineer, both with deep ties to the ship's history, perhaps even having an unrequited love story between the two. And if submarines or a ship weren't enough, there was even another idea to make just a straight up underwater mansion built on the back of a massive sea creature. Mysterious, grand, and just a brilliant way to embrace this entire underwater theme while attempting to keep it rooted in Dragon Age's tone. And ultimately, that concludes the general overall concepts that we had of Joplin before the game truly got pivoted into Morrison, and then we end up with Dragon Age the Veilguard. There were truly some fantastic concepts here, and I am so sad to have seen Imshale not have been realised in the Veilguard. However, of course, the very nature of this game, it's been in such a tumultuous development. Either way, it's super interesting to see what the next Dragon Age game could have been before EA got their way and demanded it to be live service or have a 10-year gameplay revenue plan and be built with multiplayer mechanics or whatever they mandated back 10 years ago. This would have been a super interesting Dragon Age game. And of course, not all of these concepts would have been fully realised. Even so, the whole spy dynamic, having a submarine, chasing after Solas, and the Red Lyrium Idol being more involved is more what I long for the most, just because of the entire marketing campaign of the Veilguard. But as I mentioned in my recent review, the Veilguard does feel like they made major cuts along the way, and unfortunately they just had to really create what they could, and I really do respect the team for making those decisions, but there definitely feels like there was a lot that was cut from the Veilguard, to the point where parts of it don't really make sense, like the Red Lyrium Idol pivot. But yeah, I would have really liked to have chased after Solas for a bit longer, have had him as an antagonist to understand why the Elven Gods are so bad even further, but even just the dynamic of seeing his agents and creating a team to oppose Solas and then go after after the elven gods, having seen the consequences of our actions, having had them more felt. But either way, I could truly go on. I do really appreciate BioWare sharing these concepts with us so we could have a look at what the secrets inside the Wolf Rook book were leading to all this time. What are your opinions on Joplin, the concepts here, the story beats, some of its characters? What is something that you would have ultimately loved to have seen in Dragon Age 4 that we didn't get? Let me know. I'd love to know all of your thoughts down below. I've got another cut content similar kind of video to this one that we're talking about next, which will be the data mined content that showcases a few things that the game doesn't overtly tell us, and also other things that were cut from the Veilguard before its full release. For all your things, the Veilguard, BioWare's future, you're of course in the right place. I've been Jackdaw, and until the next one, I should go. Whoa, 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 whoa.